Luiz, do you have any thoughts on what we've come up with in terms of trends in Brazil versus the US in terms of imports and consumption? How is this happening? Why is it happening? Any ideas?
Uh, what I think, Milo, is that it's it's part of population of United States, like the Latin population. They really prefer, you know, rice varieties if compared to hybrids.
Yes.
So that's my, explanation to why United States is importing a little bit more rice from Brazil because of the cooking quality, mainly because of the cooking quality. Let me just for your information, last year we imported paddy rice from United States, mainly hybrid seeds,
No.
and we could not market this rice. We already knew that for white rice, it wouldn't be possible to pack into our brands because of the
Oh,
cooking quality. So
oh,
we decided to parboil this paddy rice,
uh,
and our consumers in Brazil, they complained a lot because of the quality of the paddy rice from US. Lots of complaints, even in the parboiled rice, which
huh.
it should transform the starch, and
Yeah.
so so my main guess is that the Latin population in United States, they prefer the cooking quality of let's say South American rice if compared to hybrids in United States. This
Wow.
could be the only issue I can spot for the increase of imports from US, from us. I don't know if it was your question about that.
No,
And
yeah, but it's very interesting you say that because now South America could start to increase exports of its rice to the United States to its expats that are living in the United States, similar to what Asia figured out over the last 10 years, that there are people that
yeah,
want
but it's
Thai
a
and
it's
basmati
a
rice.
niche market. It's a niche market. I mean, and it's also very related with price. I mean, with these high freight rates, we cannot compete against local rice production in the United States, even if we've got a better cooking quality. Okay,
Right.
so this year the Brazilian exports or South American exports to US, I think it will go down because of the high rate freight rates.
Yeah.
And here in Brazil, which there is no consumption, zero, almost zero consumption for fragrant rice. So my guess, this increase in the United States should be by Asian population, not by
Gotcha.
Latin.
Gotcha.
Latin, at least Brazilians, we don't consume. I import basmati rice from India, from Punjab, and I market. We do 600,000 metric tons of rice per year in Brazil, and fragrant rice probably I sell 100 tons per year. Nothing, zero, no consumption at all in the Latin population,
Yeah.
or Brazilian population. I don't know, in the rest of South America, the fragrant rice behaves, but in Brazil, there's no options for that.
I'm making a grand assumption here. What you're saying is very interesting that as so goes Brazil, so goes the rest of Latin America. And I don't hear of a whole lot of fragrant going into the other countries. We should check that out. One of the
Yeah.
things that concerns me about what you said is that in a normal market without high freight rates, that Brazil might start to do for the regular rice market what these rices have done for the fragrant and aromatic market in the US. And over the years ahead, because you don't have the demand in Brazil, you might see more and more rice going out of Brazil to the US under normal circumstances, but I don't know. What this is saying is that the price doesn't matter to this rice because the freight rates are very high and the price is high. on a delivered basis. What I showed you were export offers, not delivered, because you really have to tack freight on top of that.
Yeah.
And so, although the freight is very high, it hasn't slowed down the demand for these rices at all.
And also it's important, Milo, and you know that, you know, there are a few trading barriers that US imposes to South American rice,
Right.
basically pesticide residues. So it's really, and also for Asian rice, and I don't know how those guys they can, solve this issue, because the pesticide residue legislation in the United States is really
Gotcha.
complicated. And this is
Gotcha.
a huge trade barrier to export rice to US currently,
Yeah.
you know, and it's curious and funny because when we imported, paddy rice from US,
Yes.
I decided to parboil this paddy rice and to re-export to US.
Yes.
Really? And before doing that, I sent the samples to our laboratory in Europe, and the same pesticide residues I got using our paddy rice, I found in the US paddy rice.
Oh,
Okay, so it could not be exported to United States. So I'm telling you that because these restrictions or these barriers are very, very important. And this is a question I have because when I
huh.
import rice from Basmati, and we've got a completely different pesticide residue legislation in Brazil, I've got plenty of problems to find out rice without these residues.
Huh.
So how come the Asians are exporting rice to US and complying with this legislation in the United States? Yeah, but I don't know if last 2 years ago, a lot of rice container loads had to come back to Brazil because of these pesticide residues
Wow.
analysis. So it amazes me when I look at those charts and I see these increasing imports of fragrant rice from Asia. I don't know how those guys can do that, specifically when blast disease. It's and the pesticide we use for blast disease in Brazil, in Thailand, in India, it's forbidden in United States.
Oh,
So which is tebuconazole, the active principle of this pesticide residue. So
yeah.
I really do not understand, how those guys can export so many rice to US.
Can I ask you a question,
Mhm.
Luis? Um, do you send rice to the U.S.? I know Brazil rice is imported into the U.S. Does that get through the pesticide requirement?
Look, to export rice to US, Milo, you don't know the effort we've got to do here. We have to finance the growers. We have to control their rice fields, for
Ah,
not allowing them to apply the pesticides. Then we need
wow,
to separate, from regular
wow,
growers in Brazil.
wow.
So the cost of doing that correctly, it's incredibly high. So,
It
and
yeah, it
before
doesn't start in
sending
the
the
mill.
goods.
It starts in the field with the farmer. Is what you're
Oh,
saying?
sure, sure. And we
Wow.
finance a lot of growers here in Brazil.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
we pick some growers, to produce specific rice varieties which are more resistant to blast disease in order to, and before, we mill the rice, and before sending the rice to US, we take a sample, we send to Primoris lab in Belgium, and
Yes.
and we scan more than 600 active principles to export to United States.
Wow.
So we never had, you know, uh, a container load returned to us. But you know the effort, and it's crazy. It's crazy, Milo.
Can
It's
I ask you a
really
question?
very expensive and very
You,
expensive as
do you
well.
sell rice to Europe?
Oh yeah, the same rice I export, the same paddy rice I export to US. I try to export to Europe. Sometimes you know the duties, and it doesn't allow us to export much rice, but you know. But it's a big issue as well, the pesticide residues over there.
I
So,
know.
but
That's why I asked the question. Yeah.
I don't understand your question. I mean, what is your concern about Brazilian? The fragrant rice related to imports in the United States. We are not producers of fragrant rice or
I know.
basmati rice.
I wanted an outside view, and you've given it to us of what it's like to sell rice to the U.S. And that's probably what I was thinking about when you said you've worked all this out in your labs and everything, and gone to great effort to produce a rice that can be imported into the U.S. But apparently, these rices from India and Vietnam and Thailand just are not reviewed like the rice from Brazil is reviewed. I guess I don't know.
I don't know. I really don't know. Or
Luis,
or their varieties are more resistant. These fragrant varieties like jasmine are more
Oh,
resistant to
maybe the case.
pesticides. Yeah,
That's worth
yeah.
looking into, isn't it, Tanner?
yes, absolutely.
I really
It's
appreciate that. That one insight is worth the call. But you've really given us a now perspective on not how can we grow rice in the U.S. and sell it, but the rice coming in, the things that other companies in yours face in order to sell rice to the U.S. And
Yeah.
so by
mm,
going to Brazil, I pretty much knew that you did it. That's why I came to you. And wow, I don't have a single clue answer as to why things.
That's correct. And very few mills in Brazil have the possibility of segregating rice like we do here,
I
you
know.
know, because we use, a mixture of rice varieties. This is not a problem here in Brazil.
Right.
So that's why, I don't think that from here we are going to see growing exports of rice to US
Right.
based on this legislation. If that changes, it
Yeah.
could. Otherwise, I don't think so.
Can I can I ask you two questions? One's not relevant to my study, but it's relevant to the what I experienced when I was putting rice into Brazil and buying rice for our mill in Porto Alegre, Tio Ben's. And what we noticed was that there was a lot of rice that was dried with charcoal, and the smoke imparted a slight flavor to the rice, which comes out in parboiling. Is a lot of rice still dried with charcoal, or has that been replaced by modern dryers in Brazil?
We in our mill we steam dry the rice. We have steam dryers, and we don't use any longer wood to dry rice. And it started to change,
Uh,
so the big mills, they started to invest in steam dryers,
gotcha.
and they don't use any longer wood to dry the rice. So it's changing. It's changing.
We
But you
had a
guys, the Latin population in the United States, it's not much concerned about this smoky taste of the
no,
rice.
no. We know that. You know,
No, there's no problems with that. No
the
problems with that in US.
yeah. So that I was just a question. Now the question I have is why is the demand for aromatics going up in the U.S. but it's not there in Brazil? Is it because you don't have as many immigrants from Asia in
That's
Brazil as we have in the U.S.?
probably that. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So, but here's what we're finding as we make this journey into this very mysterious market of which we don't have a lot of answers. Although talking to you, we're getting some more clarity. Is that there seems to be two things seem to be the case in the U.S. One is that we've talked to farmers that grow it. It's like 2 to 3% of the U.S. market comes from U.S. jasmine or aromatics. Okay, California in the South. But what they're finding is that it's not only the fastest mover on the shelf for companies in the U.S., but farmers that grow aromatic rice and look at their bottom line. They don't care about yield. It's the most profitable, and the banker likes it more than the other variety. So in terms of the grower and in terms of moving rice on the shelf, it's almost magical what we're coming up with here. It's still, as I said, U.S. grown rice is about 3% of this total demand.
And Milo, what is the price difference when you compare, let's say, an aromatic rice for the consumer compared to, let's say, a regular milled rice?
We could get that information. We don't have it, Tanner. We could just go out and look at a grocery store and know the difference, right?
I checked the prices at my local grocery store just a couple blocks from my place, and like typical white rice long grain is, oh boy, I would say, let me put it this way. If I remember correctly, Thai jasmine, not Thai home Mali, just Thai jasmine was about twice the price as regular white rice. It was significant. It wasn't like a few pennies. It was twice the price.
I don't think necessarily, Luiz, that this market has anything to do with price. It has to do with the experience, whatever it is, for whoever the consumers are. Because look at it, the imports are going up along with domestic consumption, and that's through this whole container freight thing. This will be an experiment as we move out of these high container freight rates, but it's telling me that on a delivered basis, the price doesn't matter. They want that rise, and so it's not competitive in that way. Although people say that that are importers and exporters say that, can I get your 2 bits on what's going to happen with the planting of rice in Brazil this fall? Any thoughts on the relationship between the bean price and the rice price in Brazil, and whether it will affect plantings at all?
Please go ahead.
I'm asking you. I really don't know. What I have noticed is that the price of paddy rice in Brazil versus beans is very low. It's even low. The ratio is even lower than in the U.S., which is very low. So
but here, Milo, and you know that this is switching in a very slow pace. But
gotcha.
We cannot just stop. We grow rice in very flat and lowlands here in Brazil. So the soybean seeds are not very much well adapted in this type of soil. So we cannot switch from planting rice and switch to soybeans. So we started to. There's new soybean varieties, and we started to plant in lowlands, soybeans here in Brazil. But it's in the rice area. The percentage of soybeans planted, it's tiny. It's still very, very, very low. So I don't think that we here in south of Brazil we'll keep planting rice, and also the soybeans we plant in these type of fields are in the rotation, so it doesn't compete much against the rice plantation. So I don't think that for now it's a big issue.
One other thing, do you think domestic consumption of rice in Brazil will continue to go down, or will it stabilize?
We are poor guys, Milo. When the price is extremely expensive, like now, the rice is very expensive here in Brazil. So people start eating less. That's so it's a price issue. Yeah. But and also we are still very expensive right now. We are much more competitive than U.S. rice, but for local consumers, rice is very expensive in Brazil. Very, very expensive.
versus something else?
Which would be the substitute for rice? Which other staple food is, as cheap as rice? There's no substitute. It's either rice or eating less.
So they just eat less. They don't eat something else. They just eat less rice.
I'm here, and I'll be glad to answer your question, or to try to answer your questions.
Very helpful, Luis. Very, very helpful.
Helpful. Appreciate it, Luis.
Okay, bye. Thank you. Thank you.